Hey there, how there, holders. Jeff Cutter Diamond walking you to yet another Cutter Degrassism as we look at seasons 5 and 6 of Next Gen. I already talked about the kids at Degrassi Street, which led into Degrassi Junior High, which led to Degrassi High, which led to, of course, many seasons to Degrassi Next Gen, and we're now looking at 5 and 6. Talked about the first few seasons, 1 and 2, when everyone was starting to get their storylines set up, and of course 3 and 4, where we have the famous golden era. And now we got ourselves 5 and 6. That is the stuff to do with like the post Rick shooting and all that. Of course, I had to try my best not to overdo Rick's season. Anyway, season 5, there were a lot of challenges: body image, teenage pregnancy, drug dealing, coming out of the closet, sexual identity, religion, eating disorders, and relationships. It started in Canada September 2005 and ended in March 2020. 2006. And then it was on CTV Mondays at 8:30. And had over 767,000 viewers in Canada. So anyway, this was big and all that. Actually had an increase of 24% of people, which was weird. The second episode got 1 million people. I think it was Phoenix times 2. So anyway, the first two episodes was Venus. And this was when Manny wants to be an actress, but her casting agent basically wants her to do better and to get surgery because then people will realize that she's a serious actress and all that. Unfortunately, Manny, well, of course, the casting agent criticizes her weight and it does not sit well with her parents, so she decides to get a boob job to fix the problem. At the same time, Emma is finding over this Peter boy, saying that this was the first boy she liked and since Hurricane Sean brought on through her emotional trailer park. I think that she still had the feelings for Sean, but Sean just basically left for Wasaga Beach, leaving Emma high and dry. Same time is that Craig finds out from Ellie that Ashley actually has a new boyfriend and will stay in London and all that. So of course, Manny isn't sure what to do, so she decides to get the surgery at her mom's request, but her dad's not so happy about it. In the meantime, Peter manages to get Emma and Manny to come to a party and all that, and he tapes Manny drunk and flashing her breasts at him. And then Peter decides to hold Manny ransom for $3,000. If I get $3,000, you don't have to worry about the film happening. So unfortunately, though, Manny doesn't have the money, and Peter decides to give it to the whole student body. Everyone's upset. Manny's kicked off Spirit Squad. Emma has a bone to pick with Manny, but not for the way you think it is. Emma's upset because Manny basically is trying to steal Peter from her. And she says she needs Peter and all that. Manny gets kicked out of her house by her father, who calls her a slut and all that. I mean, he has a point when he says that I didn't work hard for my family so that you can be a loose woman. And that's true. That's what immigrant families sometimes do and all that. So anyway, Manny's life falls apart, and Emma picks up the pieces and invites her to stay with Spike and Snake and her. Death of a disco dancer on October 3rd. Of course, I'm doing Canada. Is that Paige has her future planned out. She's going to Banting, and she's going to stay with Matt Olander because Olander is going to leave. Went to the Yukon, but she's going to live with Matt. Everything will be perfect. Unfortunately, though, Olander comes back from the Yukon a changed man, breaks up with Paige, and even gives her drugs to cope over the breakup, which Paige is upset too. Jimmy becomes the new basketball coach, and Derek challenges him and all that, but Jimmy doesn't stand down. Fooling is when JT is happily in love with Liberty, but then Liberty actually ends up saying that she's 4 months pregnant, and JT's upset and all that. Reality starts to set in. And then Spinner, well, the first episode, season 5, also saw Spinner be allowed back at Degrassi. And all that. Because of the whole Rick situation. And he fails to make amends with everybody, even though they don't want him. So Spinner dates Darcy and gets into the friendship club mostly as a way to find friends because, everyone's abandoned him. And then Spinner finds out that Darcy will find out about his involvement in the school shooting. All that. I don't think. Yeah, all that. But anyway, yeah. Yeah, Liberty ends up being 4 months pregnant. And they have to try to fix everything. Weddings, parties, anything is the episode in which Downtown Sasquatch has a wedding gig. And then Craig once puts focus on the music, but Manny nearly fight for Craig's attention. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Is that Jimmy tries out for the National Wheelchair Sports Junior Basketball team, but he wants to concentrate on his art. In the meantime, Danny knows about Liberty being pregnant and threatens to out them to their parents if they don't take care of a baby for him, a computerized baby for him. So yeah, he does that. Turned out part 1 and 2 is that Liberty and JT are still together and looking to buy an apartment and all that for the baby and all that. Of course, Liberty's parents are not too pleased with JT being involved in the baby's life whatsoever. JT has to quit his job at the TV studio to be a pharmaceutical assistant. And unfortunately, guess who conveniently comes in? It's Jay. That's right. Jay basically gets JT to steal Oxycontin because people would sell their own mothers to get them on the medication. So that's what happens. In the meantime, yeah. So he tries to get out of the drug dealing business at Liberty's urging, but failed miserably as the drug dealer doesn't want to do anything with it. Jay basically says bummer times at JT, even though JT is basically in trouble, as the pharmacist kind of knows what JT is doing, and he decides to take some medication. Unfortunately, he starts to lapse into unconsciousness, but fortunately, Jay, in one of his few good moments, decides, hey, you know what? This guy is sick. I better take him to the hospital. And that's what happened. JT has to go through counseling and all that. Liberty decides to give up the baby, saying that JT's not a good dad, even though JT was doing everything in his power. In fact, Marco actually, and tell it to my heart, Marco decides to finally come out to his father, who tells him to accept who he is, even though he sounds like Super Mario Brother. Super Mario. Anyway, Emma actually likes the attention Peter gives her, even though it would hurt Manny. Well, Emma was too far gone. I mean, Emma was basically um, willing to have a guy actually like her and all that. I mean, how many guys actually liked her back? Redemption Song is the 1 year anniversary of the shooting and all that. It opens up for old wounds and all that. And Spinner has to decide what to deal with his demons because the Friendship Club has an annual retreat and he has to deal with his demons and all that. Especially when Jay pops up out of nowhere and wants to ruin things for Spinner and Darcy's relationship. Spinner finally cracks and basically tells Jay, why did I have to get involved with you and all that? If I had not listened to you, Jimmy would have been walking. And of course, Jay tries to get out of the mess. Spitter breaks up with Jay as a friend, and basically that was huge. The lexicon of love is when Paige and Alex actually enjoy each other's company for some strange reason and all that. So anyway, yeah, Paige. That was when Jay and Silent Bob came back, and basically Kevin Smith tells Paige to deal with her sexuality, and it works out, quite well. That they actually could be within each other's company and all that. Of course, a lot of people were shocked that they would turn Paige gay or even bisexual because it was like that came out of left field. I mean, Paige was always with guys, but I think season 4 ruined her things with guys. I mean, let's face facts. Um, Spitter treated her terribly. Rick came back to the school and made her life a living hell. Dean got away with raping her, and Mr. Holander basically played her off. Emma decides to go on the date at the premiere of the movie with Peter, even though that it wasn't supposed to happen. But they find another couple at the premiere, Snake and Hatzelackos. Emma feels like she should tell her mother everything, even though Snake tells her not to. Emma decides she had nothing to lose. She had to. Spike gets more mad at Snake for trying to force Emma to lie. Together Forever is when Downtown Sasquatch actually has a shot at a record deal, but they only wanted to be with Craig. And Liberty actually prepares to give birth while dealing with stresses of school, and of course, being treated terribly, even though she wasn't really treated that badly as it seemed. But yeah, Together Forever was huge. So that was big and all that. Yeah, it was terrible because they gave Liberty's son's birth the subplot of all things. Eye Against Eye is when Spinner has a newly repaired friendship with Marco, but the friendship club's opinions on sex and homosexuality threaten that friendship, as Spinner is finally getting somebody back. Meanwhile, Spike, after losing Snake because of their fight, is downtrodden and all that. Our Lips Are Sealed was the big two-parter in which Emma's life is in complete chaos as she's losing all control. Then, when Manny decides to lose some weight to meet with her agent, even though she was not supposed to, because that was one of the things she was supposed to do to stay living with Spike and Snake, was that she wasn't allowed to interact with that casting agent. So Manny goes on a strict diet regime. Emma figures she might as well help Manny out. Manny loses the weight she wanted and all that, but Emma still decides to diet because everything was huge and all that. She cut off junk food. She would exercise a lot, and purged a lot. Snake actually realizes that he needs to reconcile with Spike. So he goes to the mall and serenades her with Sometimes When We Touch. Fortunately, though, Spike is willing to allow Snake back. And everyone thought, okay, well, Emma's problems are finally going to be over because she's found her center. Everything is going great for her. But not so much. She still has problems. Her dangerous diet is a full blown eating disorder and all that. So, of course, it's finally revealed that Emma is with Peter, even though that she should never have been with Peter and all that. Manny decides to move out, and Emma is upset. And then they decide to send agent intervention for Emma's help. Everyone tries to tell her she's doing some terrible things, and then Emma decides to blast everybody, calling Peter someone who takes advantage of a drunk check, Manny being that drunk chick and Snake for making out with Peter's mother. And then decides to kick Manny out for telling the secret, but then she has a panic attack. She goes to the hospital and fails to beat the disorder. Total eclipse of the heart is when Marco is interested in a new romance with Tim, but Dylan comes back into his life. Liberty actually finds out that, well, she gave up the baby for adoption, but the family's moving to Seattle. Her parents are not willing to help her out. She just basically can't understand why they would refuse to help. So, anyway, she has postpartum as it seems. She doesn't do well on an exam, which is unusual, but that was just his job. So anyway, uh, Liberty's parents basically almost disown her and all that, and then with Derek's urging, Liberty makes a memory test for the child. High fidelity is when graduation comes for the class of 2006. Paige's class and all that. Spinner and Darcy have problems and all that. Paige and Alex's relationship comes to an end when Paige is too controlling about Alex's future after graduation. And then the 100th episode of Next Gen is when graduation happens. Spinner decides to go back after Darcy and all that. Jimmy would have to repeat his senior year after missing too much school while recovering from being shot. And I thought that the punishment was from the previous year that he missed so much time, but I think because he was shot, Hathakos couldn't do all that. But then because of Jimmy's recovery and all that, Hathakos made the awkward decision to keep him in school, of course, with Spinner. And finally, Jimmy and Spinner are back together as friends and all that. Although some say it should never have happened in the first place. I don't doubt that. Season 6 is when this episode dealt with imprisonment, online predators, burglary, substance abuse, stress, gambling addiction, financial difficulties, school rivalries, pregnancy scares, and death. This would have college characters in prominent roles and all that. Season 6 becomes the first season to have a half season. Oh, I mean, a half school year, and the first death of the main character. So CTV moved Degrassi to Tuesdays and all that. So that was huge. So yeah, it was watched by fewer Canadian viewers. They actually got problems. Canada started to air it in November 2006, whereas the US started in September 2006. So anyway, Here Comes Your Man is a two-parter in which Emma is happy with Peter because Peter's helping her beat her eating disorder, and everyone's okay with the thing, even Manny. And then Sean, for some strange reason, decides to come back to Degrassi and enrolls for the coming school year. She soon becomes drawn to Sean and all that. Marco's overwhelmed with college stuff, and Ellie has to deal with her new roommate, and she gets kicked out. So anyway, yeah. So Emma and Peter are still united. And Sean comes back, and then Emma is drawn towards Sean. I think most of us can agree that Emma being with Sean was mostly because of Sean's involvement in saving Emma's life from Rick's gun and all that. I think it was easy to see. But then, of course, Emma doesn't give a straight answer to Peter about Sean and all that. And Manny tells him about the on again, off again Emma and Sean dynamic. To me, it feels like Sean was brought in to ruin Pema because of all the hate that the online forums had about Peter and Emma being a partnership. Peter gets Sean expelled from Degrassi. Emma decides to believe Peter instead of Sean. And then, everything happens for a reason. So, anyhow, you know, that's how things go. And then, of course, Sean gets thrown into jail because he faces Peter in a street race. Sean runs over a jogger, and Jay, of course, Jay would do this. Jay told Sean to leave the scene of the accident because they'll go easy on Peter. True colors is that Emma's still with Peter and all that, calling Peter the lesser two evils with Sean because Peter has to do a lot of things. So anyway, Sean's in jail, not enjoying it, and Jay and Manny try to get Emma to go towards Sean and say that Peter's the bad guy in the situation. All that. She's still torn between those two guys because obviously she wants to be with Peter in a sense, but also can't get her mind off Sean. After all, he did save her from that gun. So then she does find out that Peter planted the drugs in Sean's locker for the relationship, and Emma blows a gasket. Can't hardly wait is when Jimmy coaches the girls' basketball team and wants to take the relationship with Ashley to the next level. Anyway, Darcy clashes with Manny over the new girl Mia, who's a teen mother and all that. Whose father is not really that much interested in the light. Eyes Without a Face is when Darcy finds out is tired of her goody goody reputation and strives for something more exciting. And then she does a My Rooms page, which is like my MySpace and all that. Darcy finds out that she can post racy photos of herself in exchange for gifts. Peter introduces her to an online admirer. Unfortunately, Peter doesn't tell the fact that he's actually a middle-aged man. I don't know if Peter knew that or not. Maybe Peter kind of thought this guy was okay, but not so much. So Darcy has some very bad feelings about this and all that. Thankfully, Adams gets arrested by the cops. Claire helps out, and that was when Claire was around. Working for the weekend is when Spinner's upset over his aptitude test and decides to go in business with Jimmy to design and sell t-shirts. And Alex goes back to Degrassi so that she can get credits to become a masseuse or physical trainer. But her bullying past could come back to haunt her, and she almost says stuff about this. Crazy little thing called love is when Sean finally gets out of jail and reunites with Emma, thinking he has the perfect girlfriend. But he soon realizes she's not as innocent as she seems because of what she did to Jay. Um, Sean, of course, is upset, although Emma said that she needed an outlet because she was feeling terrible and all that. And Jay doesn't help matters. I think he just wanted to get Emma in trouble. Sean almost flees home, but sees a picture of him and Emma and finds out he can't be the bad guy he seems to be. In the meantime, Derek and Danny have issues with Perino bullying them. Although Derek and Danny do goof off in class and cause a bit of chaos, it is possible that, Perino does have a problem with Derek and Danny not taking things seriously. Unfortunately, though, Perino at a bus stop decides to destroy Derek and Danny's confidence and basically says some threats towards them. Derek and Danny then especially Derek takes their case straight to Simpson, who basically berates Perino, and Perino, I think, is put on leave. In the meantime, the episode called What's It Feel Like to Be a Ghost happens. The two-parter is when Craig comes back from a music festival where Taking Back Sunday being guest stars. And Manny feels like she wants to be with Craig. Liberty, feeling jilted over JT's stuff, decides to tell Mia the truth about JT and the fact that JT was not a good father to their kid. I mean, Liberty has some fault in this too, especially not telling everyone about her pregnancy. It could have ruined the fetus. And then part two is that Craig has massive drug addiction, and then Snake sends him to Calgary to be with Joey. Unfortunately, Degrassi and Lakehurst have a school rivalry because, JT is dating Mia, who is um, Nick's ex before she got impregnated by Lucas. And then, that's just what happened. And, you know, they were upset and all that. Rockets Town was the accumulation of this on January 9th in Canada. So, well, of course, Canada managed to do a couple episodes per day and then catch up with the US. But anyway, Rockets Town, January 9th, 2007. Canada was huge. This was the 11th episode of the season, and that's when Manny decides to throw a party at Spike and Snakes for Liberty, uh, for Liberty's birthday as a guise to try to get out and all that. So, it was just huge. Emma tries to get Manny not to throw the party, but gets voted down, and she wants to lose her virginity to Sean, which doesn't happen because she gets drunk and all that. And then, word gets out about the party, and Lakehurst comes by, Degrassi comes by, and, there'd be a lot of problems. JT doesn't know about his relationship with Mia, as well as being with Liberty. He feels he needs to talk to Liberty about their relationship. Toby tells him to go. Johnny DeMarco and Drake Lampley, the redhead, pee on JT's car. He tries to stop it, but JT gets stabbed in the aorta and all that. The bitterest pill is that Degassi is in mourning after JT's murder. Toby and Liberty have a kiss and all that. And Toby doesn't know what to feel because of the whole mess with how JT wanted to go after Liberty, not Mia, and wasn't sure if he should tell the truth. And so he decides he has to do it for his best friend and tells Liberty the truth. And people have crapped on Toby for doing so. But Toby felt like he needed to do it for JT's sake. If You Leave happened ironically. I think they did this out of order. Why did it? January 9th, 2000, April 9th, 2007. That can't be right. Oh, they must have read it. They did If You Leave a little bit out of order in Canada. It's the 13th episode, but they did that out of order. They did Free Falling in March and April before If You Leave. Yeah, so Canada mistook that. America did this. So anyway, well, free falling, doing by Canadian standards, free falling is when Paige starts to have panic attacks and doesn't know what to do. She has to juggle catching up with her schoolwork with a huge family dinner, I guess, for Thanksgiving. Peter wants forgiveness from Darcy about the whole situation, but that can't seem to do anything. Peter tries everything that he can to prove to Darcy he's changed. In the meantime, Paige decides to drop out of college because of her dorm fire, which she started to try to get out of her problems. And she moved back to Toronto. And then she has reoccurring panic attacks. Fortunately, though, her family is willing to give her another chance. And then the next episode was If You Leave, the 13th episode in Canada on April 9th, 2007, which was my 22nd birthday and all that. I think, well, that had to have happened on a Monday because I know April 9th, 2007 was a Monday, unless they switched the dates from a Tuesday to a Monday. Because I know damn well April 9th, 2007 was, well, it was my 22nd birthday in real life, and it was a Monday because that's when the Jays took on the Royals in the home opener. Anyway, Emma, this is a massive episode. I gotta try to Cliff's notes it. Basically, Emma causes a rift between Degrassi and Lakehurst when she feels like JT's death is being glossed over, and also not how knowing how to tell Manny that she doesn't want her to move back home. Of course, Marco and Dylan have their relationship problems, but Emma learns from Manny's mom that she's allowed to come back to the apartment in the view of JT's death. And Emma is upset because she feels like she's going to lose Manny as an ally, but doesn't know how to tell her. And it doesn't help matters if Manny blows off a girls' night for Damien. So Emma is steaming mad. Also, there's a cheerleading competition at Degrassi that people are like, what the heck? Why is this at Degrassi? And everyone's upset because, Lakehurst is at the competition. If Lakehurst had not been in the competition, I think Degrassi would not have flipped. Emma would not have flipped. She had some former Lakehurst people talk to her, and then basically Manny thinks that Emma has just gone off the rails. Emma kind of starts a riot. You can't do that to Lakehurst, saying "Go home, Lakehurst," and expect you to win the competition. I don't know why they still won the competition. Emma gets scolded by Snake. She finally snaps, but then she's told that her problems are with Manny, not Lakehurst. And so Emma and Manny patch things up, and that's when Emma realizes she shouldn't be that bad towards Manny, although she's a little overzealous and all that. So yeah, like Emma had a right to free. I mean, compared to the shooting in season 4, I mean, she didn't take too long to actually admit things and basically try to talk to people, but felt like people didn't want to talk to her. So that's when she kind of went back to internalization. Love My Way is when Paige goes on dates with Spinner and Jesse and makes Alex jealous and all that. Snake, of course, is uncomfortable with Sean and Emma's level of intimacy, mostly because, Emma wants to be with Sean. All that. Sunglasses at Night is when Marco's upset with Dylan's departure and goes to online gambling. Meanwhile, Peter and Darcy patch things up and don't know if their relationship should be public or private. And Don't You Want Me is when Alex becomes a waitress at a gentleman's club because her, her and her mom are in financial debt. So she becomes a waitress, and then there's more money to be on stage. She has a double life and all that. Unfortunately, though, it comes to a bitter end when Alex's mom uses the money to bail one of her ex-boyfriends out of jail, and Alex basically blows up at her and decides to leave. Fortunately, Paige helps her out with the problems. In the meantime, Emma's upset when Sean decides to go to the army and all that. Of course, it's mostly Peter's fault because of the fact that, Sean was trying to get better, and then, with no high school education, what are you going to do? So he finds out he can join the army. Emma is not too pleased with it for obvious reasons. She doesn't want, probably feels like Sean is going to die overseas and doesn't approve of everything. So she's scared, and then she ends up missing her period and then thinking she's pregnant and all that. And she kind of feels like in her mind, if she can use the pregnancy to get Sean to come to not go to the army. Unfortunately, that fails miserably. Emma is not pregnant, obviously. And, like, I don't blame Emma for blowing off on Sean because, Emma felt like she was with Sean. After all the crap that Peter put Emma through, and then Emma finds with Sean, and then he leaves her for a second time. I understand what Emma's problems are, but they manifest themselves mostly in season 7, and I'll let that sink in for you next week. Anyway, I'm just I'm gonna do.